Good afternoon, family. I'm so glad that you're joining us again this afternoon, wherever you are. Today, I want to show you two different videos. One that you're looking at right now is actually a video clip that was taken inside the ceiling of a client, on top of the gypsum boards. And then the second video you're going to watch is just basically us kicking it back and relaxing with the people that really make my world go around. I'm so blessed that I have a very tight-knit family, and I spend as much time as I can with them. So you'll see that towards the end. But recently I got a call from a client who needed help with just connecting KPLC to their brand new home. And for those who don't know, KPLC is the national power company. And that should be a relatively simple process. So as always, we discuss what the client's needs were, and then I dispatch somebody. And normally when we do that, when a client requests for one thing, we often do a complete check, just in case. For example, we don't want to put tiles on a floor that is problematic, or we don't want to paint a wall that had problems with plastering. Because again, once we do our work, if anything falls apart, the client will not tell the distinction between whether the issue was on our part or from the previous part. So while today we were only sent to just assess the possibility of connecting KPLC, we had to do a full check. And that's what my guy is doing right now, moving around. And as you can tell, it does not require any expertise to determine that this is a complete disaster. Again, before we do any work, we have to be very clear of what our responsibility is, so that if anything goes wrong, if it's on our part, we accept responsibility and then we come and fix it at no cost to the client. So again, the video you're watching is inside the ceiling of a client, and what we found was a complete disaster. Unfortunately for our client, this house has to be rewired completely afresh, and I'll explain why. Now, a process this is not going to be a cheap thing per se, because again, the client has already spent money, has already done wiring, and thought they are ready to move on to the next thing. And so anytime you have to split your budget and add it on something that is unplanned, it's really disappointing. So while this is not going to be fun, it has to be done. Because as you are looking at the roof, for those of you who know what you're looking at, you're going to have to bring high quality wires, because the wires that they used were some of the cheapest I've ever seen out there. We're going to have to do piping for the entire roof, because actually in all my years in construction, I have never seen any electrician do wiring without pipes in the same way as you've seen with that client. And so we're going to need to do new piping. We're going to need to move electrical points, hack some walls, and there are certain very sensitive safety features that were not included at all. So essentially, this is going to be a complete rewiring of a home, which is really not fun. So as I said, we were only invited to do the KPLC part, but we realized this was a disaster. And what we typically do when we find a problem, we invite the client, explain to them what's going on, and we ask them to address the issue before we can work. So if they have good people, they do that, and then we come and do our part. Or if they don't have systems, then we address the issue first before our guys can come in. Because again, if our guys went on and brought KPLC connection to this house, and then a disaster strike, I don't know, that would be terrible. So either way, that's where we are with our client, and these things happen. It's not unusual. Sometimes I have a client who invited me to do the kitchen work for her, and then we walk in, we realize the walls are literally splitting apart. So then the kitchen work had to be stopped, and we're addressing something else, and I'll show you that in a video coming up soon. So clearly, whoever did this job likely it almost looks like a mtu wa mkono to me, and that often means a handyman, because I don't know how a certified electrician could do what we found up here. Or if it was a certified person, they were just extremely unethical, because it appears they were really trying to cut costs using very cheap wires, very small wires. For example, anybody who is not an electrician would know that wires directed towards the kitchen stove cannot be the same thickness as wires that are meant for lighting. You don't need to be an electrician to know that. And just the idea that they bought pipes, and on top of the roof there's not even a single pipe used. Personally, I've never seen anything like that. So one thing that I want to remind you at this point too is that in Kenya, based on my limited experience, anyone you hire to bring you solar power or power with Kenya Power and Lighting Company eventually will get you power. You'll be able to turn on your lights and it'll come on. It doesn't matter whether you're working with crooks or you're working with highly qualified professional. Anybody you hire is going to get you power. However, after they leave, that is when the devil comes out. That may happen maybe a few months later on. It could be a year, or it could be just a few years down the line, right? When you realize massive problems and you can't figure out what's going on. And also, as some of you may already know, that the average homeowner really does not have the expertise on electricity, myself included. There's so much I don't know about electricity, but there's a few things that I've known having done this for some time. And to make it even worse, how many homeowners even bother to climb up their ceilings to check whatever is going on up there? I've never done it, because all of us, or most of us, simply work in faith, hoping that the people we hire know what they're doing, they're ethical enough, and they're going to do the right thing. In fact, I've never climbed inside the ceiling in my house, because I assume they've done the right thing, so I don't need to check some of those things. But unfortunately, for many homeowners, the crooks within these systems already know that. These unethical folks know that it's highly unlikely that a homeowner is going to climb up there to check what they've done. And even when they check, you don't even know what you're looking at in terms of the quality of the wires, the thickness, and how the wires are laid out. The average person does not know what they're looking at. So it often takes an expert to be able to determine whether what has been done is correct or not. So here's what you need to know if you are a homeowner who is at this stage, because I'm talking to quite a few clients who are thinking about laying the pipe work, the wiring, and all that stuff. There's some just common things that I want to share with you that you can ask about, or for those whose homes are complete and they're already living in them, these pointers that I'm going to share could still be helpful. Because as we always complain, many people talk about tiling work, finishes, and all that, but electricity is one of those areas that is commonly an issue that most folks always find out once they move in. Rarely do you find a client pointing out electrical issues before they move in. Because as I said, these crooks will come in, do whatever they're doing in there, and oftentimes you'll move in, you have your power, and then things start happening. So here is a more detailed look of some of the problems you might notice, keeping in mind that some of the more common electrical wiring problems you will see is that you might notice flickering lights, frequent circuit breakers, maybe different smells, like you might smell like rubber burning, or outlets that are warm and things like that. So I'm going to give you some of the most common issues that I've seen, at least in different homes where work has needed to be done. Number one of the things you notice is that in some cases you have bulbs that are flickering or dimming on their own when they're not designed to do that. And this can indicate maybe some kind of a loose wiring, an overloaded circuit, or some kind of a fault somewhere within the wiring system. And again, there's no way to tell until you bring an expert to check what's going on. Now, when you notice that there's always frequent circuit breaker tripping, that is not normal. These gadgets are designed to trip as a safety issue, but it shouldn't be tripping every other day or with some level of frequency. So if you have to keep going back and forth to flick it up every single time, then there's a problem. And oftentimes it means there's an overloaded circuit, or there's some kind of fault within the wiring, or there could be any number of issues going on that again still requires a professional to take a look and see what's going on. Now again, as a homeowner, please don't ignore if something does not feel right, if something looks different, something smells different. Don't ignore it hoping that it'll go away on its own. That's not how things work. And so when you smell like a burning smell of some kind of rubber melting, because sometimes you might even notice that outlets or even wires are melting. It might be the wires, it might be the switches, or it might even be an appliance. That could be a serious warning of overheating and potentially dangerous wiring issues. Again, when you notice that, please don't ignore it. Call somebody who knows what they're doing to come and check so you can get help. Now, again, as I say, as part of being vigilant, if you go and touch a switch and it just feels unusually warm, most people ignore that because you don't know how normal feels. But if it feels just unusually warm, whether it's an outlet, whether it's a switch and all that, you want to pay attention, because these things are not supposed to be hot. When that happens, clearly you have a problem. And so again, it could be wiring, it could be any number of issues that I don't even know about. And this is where experts come in to check and they help. And again, also use your sense of hearing. All of your senses are engaged. If there's some kind of a buzzing, some kind of a hissing, or the more common one that I even had recently is some kind of a tap sound. I had a case where on my way out, we have a switch by the door that turns off the chandelier. So when I switch it off, I hear like a tap sound upstairs. So things like that, you will clearly tell that there's something going on. And the good news is you don't have to figure that on your own. So call somebody to take a look. And again, use your eyes as well. If you notice frayed or damaged wires, as we always say, inspect wires for any signs of damage, such as fraying, cracks, or exposed insulation. Because those exposed wires can actually harm somebody really bad. So when you see something, smell something, or hear something that feels just not right, the best thing you want to do, call somebody who knows what they're doing. And in some cases, you might actually see loose outlets or switches. And outlets or switches that feel a little loose or wobbly could indicate a problem with wiring or just poor workmanship. And those things that are falling off the wall are not ideal, of course. And those are problems that some of us can do on our own for those who know what they're doing. But call somebody to help. And then if your bulbs keep burning out much more frequently than expected, then that might be an indication of a problem, because you shouldn't be replacing bulbs every other day. If you need to be replacing that all the time, then you probably have a problem. So you want to make sure that even when recently replaced fixtures are going off, then that may be a problem, probably with the voltage fluctuation or arcing due to faulty wiring. So make sure, again, always invite somebody who knows what they're doing. Or when you go to one of these outlets or a switch and then you feel an electric shock, you have a problem. Because you're not supposed to feel an electric shock while operating your electricity in your house. If that happens, then that might be a very serious safety hazard issue that really requires immediate attention. So what should you do in general? You're already in your home, your house is done, you're enjoying your house, and then you notice issues. Number one, don't attempt to fix electrical problems by yourself unless you know what you're doing or unless you are qualified. There are two things I tell folks to be careful. When it comes to plumbing and electricity, be very careful. Don't touch things unless you know what you're doing, because this could have very deadly consequences. You can actually burn your own home. And then, of course, as I've said in the past, and I'll repeat it 1,000 times, contact a licensed electrician who knows what they're doing. And then I always say that, especially for folks with homes that are multiple stories, you ask your folks to separate in such a way that you can actually split the floors, so that if there's a problem on the down floor, you can turn off power on the problematic floor while still being able to use the upper floor. So when you split your systems, you can isolate one area where they're working on while you're still able to use the other parts. So turn off the area that is affected as you wait for help from a qualified person. And then I always say, be very cautious when working with electrical equipment, because sometimes we end up overloading the system. So always unplug appliances before cleaning and services them, and also make sure you know the capacity of the equipment you use at home, because some of our homes are not designed to work with the very heavy equipment that require a lot of power. So please make sure you know what you're doing when it comes to electrical equipment. And then in general, I know many of us don't have this culture of maintenance. It's okay to do inspections. Once in a while, after a few years, you can invite an electrician just to take a look to see if there's anything out of place. Because I'd rather you anticipate these problems early and address them, as opposed to waiting for disaster before you fix it. And then avoid overloading your circuits. Whatever you do, do not do that. Well, I hope this was helpful. And if you have any issues, please reach out on the number that I post below. I'll see you in the next video. Thank you.